And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Payson Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, December 4th, 7 EST, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Cinemasters Reviews. Exciting show. We're getting towards the end of the year, and we are going to be reviewing two really interesting films tonight. First being the newest entry in the Godzilla franchise, Godzilla -1, as well as the return of John Woo to Western cinemas, that being Silent Night. But joining me to review the first film, Godzilla -1, when I saw there was a new Godzilla movie coming out, there was only one person I could think of to join me to review. That is Godzilla superfan himself, returning guest, Kirk Kowalkowski. Kirk, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Payson. How are you?
I'm doing great. Really happy that you're joining me to review the movie tonight. No, you're not feeling the best, but really excited to be to talk about this movie with you. And I say we jump right in with our first review, that being, of course, like I said, Godzilla -1. This is directed by, as I pull up my notes, directed by Takashi Yamazaki. This is the newest Godzilla film from, is this made by Toho?
Yes.
Okay, yes, it's the newest Godzilla film by Toho. Most of the Godzilla films lately have been from Legendary Pictures. This one made by Toho, which is where the character obviously originated from. This one is set once again back in the 1940s, like the original Godzilla film. Really takes the character back to its own roots. You are following a kamikaze pilot by the name of Shikishima, who witnesses on the last phases of the war in World War II. Essentially, one night witnesses an attack of Godzilla and gets PTSD. 2 years later, he's trying to cope with it. He's assigned a job to go out and minesweep. And wouldn't you know it, Godzilla might be back. Kirk, before we head into our main review, why don't you give the listeners at home just a quick history of your history with the character?
Yeah, I've always loved kaiju. I think for most of my life, I've liked the idea more than the actual movies. But a couple years ago, my son actually started watching all the Godzilla movies straight through, and I had never watched them like that. So just getting to do that was really exciting. It really got me on board with those, and then got me into other movies and spin-offs from Godzilla, and then just other kaiju stuff that's not involved with Godzilla. But yeah, I've really over these past few years really fallen in love with the genre and with this character and this franchise in general.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot more history with the franchise as a whole than me. When it comes to the older movies, I definitely remember renting the movies from Hollywood Video back in the day. But for me, as a kid, they were really good, just background movies.
Sure.
You're just watching, they'd be a lot of fun. I don't think I really watched them from start to finish. Too many, except for maybe, unfortunately, Godzilla 1998, which is gutter trash, if you will, in my opinion. I've seen all of the ones since Godzilla 2014, and I've really liked most of them. I just kind of view them as to me, those are what I would consider dumb popcorn entertainment of just I just want to see the giant monsters fighting. Some of them I like more than others. I'm the weird guy that thinks Godzilla King of the Monsters is the best one of this latest, which is the second Godzilla one. I know this is an unpopular opinion. I think that's the best one of these new kaiju movies, but that's the one I really like. But last night, to prepare for this review, I went back and watched the original Godzilla movie, and with both Godzilla -1 and the original, I think it just makes me appreciate. I think I just like it when the franchise is just a little bit more grounded, and it really treats Godzilla like a villain, because in so many of the other Godzilla movies, I enjoy when Godzilla is the hero and sort of out to fight other monsters, but there is something just kind of menacing when it's Godzilla going truly as a force of absolute destruction against the Japanese people. And Yeah, I'll just say, like, my first pause of this movie, as someone who's primarily versed in the Legendary Pictures Godzilla universe, I love how grounded this feels. Like obviously when you're dealing with a giant mutated lizard that was like, that came around through like nuclear radiation, you can only make that feel so realistic. But I love how seriously this movie takes it. How like you really see the destruction of Godzilla when he goes through Japan, when he does eventually show up, how the scientists are all like, okay, how are we going to really defeat this monster? What did you feel about like kind of like the like scaling back in nature of Godzilla in this movie?
No, I like that, and just to your point, I think that's what's cool about Godzilla. He's kind of like Batman, and that could be a lot of different things.
Yeah,
It could be a serious horror movie. It can be an allegory. It can be a campy, fun, monster battle. It could be a kids movie. It's a lot. Godzilla's been all those things. But I'm with you. I like it better when it is a little more grounded, when it has more of an idea behind it. I mean, my favorite 3 Godzilla movies are, I don't give my rating away, but before this, I'd say my top 2 Godzilla movies were the original '54 Godzilla and Shin Godzilla, because they both
I that. Shin Godzilla, yeah.
They've both done that, where it takes the idea of Godzilla and makes it very allegorical, specifically to Japanese culture and their history, their history of the century. So I think that this movie does something very similar to that, and I really like that. I really like the fact that it was so, taking from very specific ideas and things that were happening to people in post-war Japan.
Yeah, you often hear the phrase when people are talking about Godzilla movies, I don't really care about boring human characters, just get to the monster action. And oftentimes I would give that excuse. After watching this movie, I don't think I can personally give that excuse again, because I love how much care and effort this movie goes to make you care about all the characters in the movie, and how a giant monster coming into their lives and raining destruction is going to affect them. The relationship between Shikishima and Oishi, who is the woman that Shikishima begins a relationship after he comes back from the war, I think is probably the heart of the movie. You see that Shikishima throughout the film is still dealing with PTSD and dealing with survivor's guilt, because he was the only one that survived this giant this giant monster attacking him. And of course, as you might expect from the 40s, no one believes him. Like, no one believes, like, hey, I'm the only survivor of this giant lizard attack. And just as the movie goes on, you see how seriously, like, when Godzilla eventually shows up again, how fearful he is and how their relationship sort of grows there. I think that really was one of the strongest aspects of the film. What did you think about the characters in general, Kirk?
Yeah, I think these are up there, if not the best, some of the best human characters we've got in Godzilla. And I mean, you don't get, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more, but you don't get a ton of Godzilla in this. He doesn't get a ton of screen time. In a Godzilla movie, I'm always going to say I want more Godzilla, but I didn't mind the fact that they were focused so much on the humans, on their story. I think it's safe to say this movie isn't about Godzilla. It's about this character and his story. And 9 times out of 10, that's just going to be an eye roll for me. Like, I don't want that, but I think they did a great job of really telling this story and building that around or above with the Godzilla stuff, and then bringing that into it and making that part of his story and his arc. I think they did a really great job of that. So no, I love these characters.
Yeah, while watching this movie, I wanted to see if you understand this comparison, especially in the second half of this film, where it really becomes like, okay, the world has now been known of Godzilla's existence, and now it's Japan's job to essentially go out and kill Godzilla. It reminded me a lot of Jaws in a way. Yeah. Where, like, hey, now that we know this monster is out there, the mission is now to go out and try and, like, does that comparison make sense?
No, it does, absolutely. And that's something else I liked about it, how personal they made the conquest of Godzilla. They kind of explain away the reasons why they're not going to get much help direct from either the Japanese government or the American government. And these citizens kind of have to take it on their shoulders. And it becomes almost like they're, where the things we did wrong in the war, maybe we can get right here. And they're kind of like, it's like almost like a redemption arc for this entire group of people. And, we were so willing to sacrifice life and for these reasons during the war, can we save life now by stopping Godzilla?
No, yeah, I really do think it is a profound message that it does get, and obviously, Godzilla as a political allegory is nothing new. Like, the character started out as it started out in the 50s. It was a post-war allegory for how Japan was handling after the atomic bomb explosion. But yeah, I just think the more it makes you care about the human drama, the more invested and the more emotionally affected you are when you see Godzilla like raining terror throughout. Like, as like, although I do enjoy, like, for example, Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, like, I don't really care too much about those characters. So when I see Godzilla destroying San Francisco, I'm like, okay, he's destroying San Francisco. When Godzilla in this movie is destroying Tokyo, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is everyone going to be okay? Like, I'm truly invested. I didn't write all the characters' names down. I do think there are quite a few characters. The one character I do want to shout out is Kenji, who is the engineer. He's the one with like the glasses and the wild hair.
Yeah.
I started to really root for him towards the end because he's the one that like comes up with the formula to be like, this is how we're going to take Godzilla down. We're going to use balloons to like keep him down. And I thought he was really, really fun. Were there any other standout characters for you, Kirk?
Yeah, I think the entire crew, that the main character, he ends up, like you said, he after the war he gets a job minesweeping of the the active mines from the war era. He's on this boat with his crew. And he gets to know them, becomes friends with them, and there's 3 of them. I think they're really well, but there's also there's specifically one young character. They just call him the kid. It's a kid. He didn't serve. He's one of the few people in this event trying to stop Godzilla who didn't serve in the war. And the older guys are trying to protect him and keep him back, but he's very eager to kind of do his part and get his chance to participate where he didn't in the war. And he gets a really cool moment to shine at the end, and I really thought that was a really good character.
It's so funny. One of the last movies I think we talked about was Last Voyage of the Demeter together, and it's so much funny how much more invested I was in this crew than in the crew of that movie. Which I just found that to be a really funny coincidence. But yeah, just as the movie goes on and as the like conflict goes of, hey, we need to go take out Godzilla in the sea, just scenes where like you really feel like the characters are at peril. There is one shot in this film, I don't want to spoil it, but it's a shot where every single character truly believes this is it, we are about to die. That like it's gonna go down as one of my favorite like movie moments of the year so far, because just the use of silence in that moment, like the hair stood up on my arms, and what happens after is just pure movie magic to me. I can see some people finding it a little cheesy. I loved it personally.
No, I think within this story and thematically, the way this was being told, I think that was a great moment. I think the whole idea of them working together and thinking they had it, and then maybe we don't, and coming to terms with that in that one, and the way the movie just kind of pauses for a moment to let you drink in what they're all feeling at that moment is really powerful.
Something I really want to talk about, and I've seen a lot of people talk about this. For a movie with a $15 million budget, it needs to be talked about how good looking this movie does look. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, hey, why do American films not look like this? Did some research. If you think labor issues are an issue for VFX in America, about 100 times worse in Japan, so I don't want to talk about that too much, but I'm going to talk about what I see on the screen, and this movie looks gorgeous. Like, Godzilla is CGI, and like, as much as I do love the old classic rubber suit Godzilla, you just can't like make him like as menacing as you do when you have like a fully CG and have him this mobile. What do you think about the design of Godzilla as well as the visual effects?
No, it's great, and I very much am a suit work and miniatures guy, and I always prefer that. But I think they do a great job in this of making it look real. Like, there were moments where I went with my son and his one friend, and we were trying to figure out is any of this suit work or any of the close-ups, maybe, because it was that good. And I think he just has, and this goes back to, I think one of the best designs is the original design of Godzilla's first couple of movies, because he looks like something that's been sitting at the bottom of the ocean for a million years. And this movie does that. Like, there's so much detail in his body, in his scales, in his armor, that, just the way he looks, all the close-ups, like he looks like something ancient, something not really of this world that we're used to seeing anyway. And so I think the character design, and there's a few moments, cool moments. I don't want to spoil because they're not big spoilers, but they're fun little moments where there's Godzilla's powers do some things a little different. And it's just really some really cool little tricks that they do that are a lot of fun. I think it all looks fantastic.
In this movie, Godzilla truly looks like a monster.
Yeah.
Like, I think the issue with a lot of times with like the CGI Godzilla, it looks too clean for me.
Mhm.
Like, it looks like just like a giant like giant animal when like this should be something that like Godzilla should be ugly. Like Godzilla should be menacing, and this Godzilla is menacing. I love the spikes on this Godzilla. Like, I think the spikes look so like protruded in a way, and yeah, in the way. There's one major moment when this movie catches me off guard, and it's when Godzilla's about to roar. And Godzilla has such an iconic roar, and without spoiling anything, the sound that Godzilla makes is not the traditional sound, and I was like, whoa, okay, okay. Yeah, we're in. But yeah, I really did feel the menace for Godzilla with this movie.
And I think something else good about the design is the eyes.
Yeah.
You could see, when he would get close enough, when people get close enough to see his eyes, you could see him looking around. There's like intelligence behind those eyes. And I think that's something. The one thing you do lose with a suit is like the eyes usually aren't great because they're usually like googly eyes or just like painted on or whatever. So you don't get a lot of emotion behind those. But the work they did on his eyes where he's looking around and you could tell he's figuring stuff out was pretty cool.
Question for you. You said you're a much bigger, like, you'll always prefer the rubber suit to CGI Godzilla.
Yeah.
Do you think in a 2023 world, do you think you could make the rubber suit and the practical effects still work and be believable in today's film world?
I don't know if you could do it in a way that anybody would accept. I think there's definitely a way to combine them.
I would agree.
I know the original plan for Shin Godzilla, there was some puppetry and some suit work. None of it made it into the final cut. But they did try to combine that. And I think there are some ways that you can do that. I think we're just so far gone in the CG. Like, if I saw that, if you put on like a really good, like, because I mean, you didn't have to go that far back to when they were doing suits. I mean, they were doing suits in the early 2004, 2005 Final Wars. I think that was the last American or the last Japanese movie that did all suit work, and it looked great. So I think if you could use one to complement the other, and I think it would be great. But I would love to see them return to at least some practical suit work.
I'm going to use a comparison to an awful movie, but the one good thing about 2001's Planet of the Apes is the ape suits and like the makeup actually look really good. Yeah. And it's kind of I enjoy the motion capture in the new Apes movies, but it's kind of a shame that we got so far in practical effects, and right when we got to the peak of it, we're like, all right, let's just switch all over to CG.
Yeah.
And it really is a shame. But yeah, like as you said it, I do think like combining the mixture of it, kind of maybe like what George Miller does in like Mad Max Fury Road, where like, yes, a lot of it is stunt work, but at the same time, there's a ton of CG just to like brush up certain things.
Yeah.
I think that would be the way to go with the suit work and with, in order to make the practical effects work. I've always said, if you're shooting something from like a far distance, that's when I think CG is usually effective.
Yeah.
But like when you get close, that's when I think you should start using practical effects, because that's when it's very easy to tell, like, okay, what I'm looking at isn't real.
Yeah.
One of the things I do want to talk about, and I had this thought watching 1954's Godzilla as well. We don't talk enough about just how awesome the Godzilla score is. Like, it's not like a booming score or anything, but it's just ominous. And every time it comes on, I'm like, oh man, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Like, you just feel like you're in danger and you're not safe when that score hits. Do you like the Godzilla score, Kirk?
I would say I can't think of a theme that goes harder, and I'm including anything John Williams ever wrote in here.
Wow. Okay.
Than the Godzilla March. And when me and my son watch these movies together, and we're always just waiting, when is it going to kick in? There's so many great moments throughout the franchise where there's just so many great Godzilla March moments. And we were listening on the way to the theater, and like, when do you think they're going to play it? And we got so excited. And the funny thing is, talking about how scary Godzilla is in this movie and how invested you get in the characters. when the first time they start playing it, they don't go the whole way into it, but they're playing the intro, and it's during a part where a character we've come to care for is very much in danger.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, don't play it now. Because like I just kind of like want to rock out to it, watch Godzilla like destroy stuff, and they start playing it. I'm like, no, I'm too worried about this person. I don't want to see this person die. I can't really enjoy the song. So so they, like I said, they don't play it again until like full through later in the film, and it's a perfect moment for it. And it's just it gets exactly the attention it deserves, and it fills that that scene out so well. But no, I've always loved the score of the Godzilla movies. That main theme is just is amazing.
Yeah, no, for real. Like every time it picks up, I'm like, oh, now we're in. And like any good piece of score in a movie will have you do that. I know it does sound like we don't have anything negative to say about the movie. I kind of do have a few negatives that I do want to talk about with you. And it mainly just kind of pertains to the ending of this movie. One like half critique and one full critique.
Yeah.
Without spoiling anything, I think the end. A part of me thought, well, I didn't hate the ending conclusion. Well, I didn't dislike it. I did feel like it felt a little clean and a little maybe too safe.
Okay.
And then the one thing I definitely didn't like, I was not a fan of the last like 30 seconds of this movie. I think for a huge franchise like Godzilla, you don't need to tease that. Like you don't need to tease that. Like unless you're teasing like a new monster, you don't need to do what this movie did. What did you think about like but I'll say, what did you think about the denouement and the full like conclusion?
Yeah, to your first point, and again without trying to go spoiler free as possible, I understand your critique.
Yeah,
and I think in any other movie I would feel the same way as you do, but I think thematically the story that was being told, I think it was kind of necessary.
Okay.
And not that if it didn't happen, I wouldn't be upset. But the fact that it played out the way it did, I understood. And again, I won't say the exact reason why.
You know what? Here, let's do this.
Okay.
Don't put this up often. Let's talk about it.
Okay. All right. The whole theme of the movie is survival. You know, people who have survived and the life. You know, like is life worth living? You know. The people who survived the war, why did they survive? Why are we still here? What does our life mean? Is there a purpose to it? And I think the fact that, and since we're in spoilers, we go into the fact with it, you know, the kamikaze pilot, his whole arc was at the beginning, he wasn't going to, you know, he chose not to sacrifice himself. At the end, he wants to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
And he tries to do that. And at the last minute, we find out that he was, you know, he was given it out. He was able to do what he had to do without killing himself. And again, to me, that in another movie, that would have felt cheap to me. But the fact that thematically, the whole movie was about, you know, staying alive. And, you know, the professor, the guy you were talking about, he says something to begin at the beginning, before they go into battle. We want to keep everybody alive. We think we can do this. You know, we sacrificed so much in the war. Let's keep everybody alive. So I think the fact that he survived, that the kamikaze pilot survived, and they all lived. Again, I think in a Marvel movie, I would walk out angry. But I think in this movie, because of the themes, I think it worked. And same with the girl, you know, his
that's the major one that I kind of.
And that's what I thought. That's what I thought you were talking about. But even that, I think, with that whole theme of survival and, you know, and just living, and making it through, I think it worked for me. But I understand why it might not for you. But because of the whole thematic element that played into it, worked for me.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the spoiler alert now, so I can clear my thoughts up more. I had no issue with the whole crew surviving and Shikishima trying to sacrifice himself and then ultimately living, because, like I said, well, not only do I think it works with the themes of this movie like you did, at that point, when I describe movie magic, I mean, like, I am just so into it at this point where I'm like, you have me at this point, and that's when I think the movie just completely won me over. But yeah, when you learn that Oisho did survive, that was the moment where I was like, are you kind of double dipping? Like, I was asking myself, but now that you do put it more in the sense of the whole movie's theme is survival, I would now definitely see the defense more. But yeah, I'll just say, like, ending this whole movie with that, with what you have, like this big emotional reunion between the two main characters, and then just ending like to say, "Hey, Godzilla's back." Like, at the end of the day, this franchise is huge. We're gonna get another one. I don't think you need that.
No,
Like,
I don't think that you need, like. Did you say you have seen Shin Godzilla, or you haven't yet?
I have not, but I really want to.
Okay,
now.
there's a teaser at the end of Shin Godzilla that I guess they're never going to do anything with, but it's really cool because it's different. It's not just, hey, Godzilla's still alive. There's like another chapter they open the door to.
Okay.
And I think it's okay if you do something like that, but with this just being like, hey, he's still alive, he's still regenerating or whatever. Like you said, yeah, it's completely unnecessary. Like we know, like it's a Godzilla movie. There's going to be, there's been 40 of them. There's probably going to be another one.
Like if you would have used that to show that a new monster is coming, I would have been okay with that. But I think the fact that it's literally just he's still alive, I'm like, you did not need that. Like that is so unnecessary. But that's really only my major complaint with this film. Before we head into final ratings, is there any other thing you want to talk about?
No, I think we covered it all. It's just a really great character-driven movie. I love what they do with Godzilla too. We didn't talk about the fact that you see it the first time you see him, it's before he's been, irradiated by the nuclear energy. So he's basically still just a dinosaur. And you get you compare it to Jaws, we get a really cool kind of Jurassic Park type moment when we first see him, where he's basically just still an animal, a prehistoric animal, but he's still an animal. And it's a very different version that we usually see of him. So I thought that was interesting.
No, 100%. Well, Kirk, I say we head right into final ratings. We rate movies here at Cinemaster's Review on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes. 0 is atrocious, and 10 is absolutely incredible. Kirk, on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, what would you give Godzilla -1?
I really like this. This is probably my top 3 Godzilla movies. I think for me now it goes 54, Shin, and then this. I'm going to put this at an 8.5.
8.5. Yeah, that is a great rating. I'm going to keep that rating up because I am also going to be giving it an 8.5. This just feels like a great monster. It's what you want from a monster movie where the threat of the monster is there, but it's because you care about this world and the people, because the film takes the time to really it really invests the time in making you care about those elements. And when the monster does eventually show up, it doesn't eventually forget hey, we need to stop focusing on those elements, which I think a lot of giant monster movies often forget. They'll try to set up things and then when the monster eventually shows up, it's like, oh, time to just show destruction. It's like, but you got to keep the characters interesting. Yes. I digress. If you have the chance to see this in theaters, please go see this in theaters. I think it's an awesome, awesome movie. But yeah, I think that just about does it for our review of Godzilla -1. Kirk, before you leave tonight, is there anything you want to plug?
No, just go ahead and follow me on Letterboxd and keep watching from here and anywhere else in the community where they'll let me talk about movies.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Speaking of talking about movies, I'll let you do this because the 2 people that got to review this movie gave it a positive rating, and I know you absolutely despised it. I'll give you 10 seconds to explain your thoughts on Dumb Money.
10 seconds? Okay. It's people just looking at their phones over and over again. It's the same 3 scenes. Like, nothing changes in the story except the amount of money they're making. It's, hey, it's this much money now. Should I sell? Should I buy? Hey, now it's not this much money. Should I sell? Should I buy? Then they watch CSI. Okay.
That was fun. Watch CSI. Straight from the record, as Tim McCullough would say. Yeah, thank you so much, Kirk. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Considering this is the second to last review of the year, we'll probably get you on next year if you're down. But yeah, thank you for supporting Cinemaster's reviews in every way that you do.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Have a great night, Kirk.
You do.
Always a pleasure to have Kirk Kolakowski on, but we are going to be jumping right into our second review of the night, that being John Woo's Silent Night. This is a Christmas action movie, as well as the first American release from John Woo in about 19 years since 2004's Paycheck. This one is about a man who on Christmas Eve, his child is shot in a drive-by shooting. He tries to chase down the gang member that does it, but unfortunately ends up getting shot in the throat, leaving him speechless and unable to talk. Throughout the next year, he begins to grieve and mourn and grow farther away from his wife until his wife eventually leaves him, and then he decides to prepare for another year in order to go and hunt down the gang members that eventually killed his son, which eventually ends in a big climactic shootout where our main character takes out all the gang members. One thing that I do think should be important to say is not only can the main character not speak in this movie, no one speaks in this movie. This is a silent action film. You have score, you have gunshots. You'll occasionally hear like radio broadcasting, so that's kind of like the most amount of dialogue you'll get. But for the most part, there is no dialogue at all, and the movie does an okay job keeping to its gimmick. The number one positive I will say about this movie, it is very impressive that John Woo in 2023 made a 105-minute silent film. I cannot take that away. That is impressive on layman's terms. I think it is. I think this, as an experimental film, I think this was unique. I'm happy it exists. That being said, I think this movie is absolutely atrocious. The main issue with this film is it is ungodly boring. Just to explain the structure of this film, you see our main character, played by Joel Kinnaman, chasing down the gang member at the beginning. We don't know why he's chasing him down. He gets hit by a car and gets shot in the throat. Then we see him grieving with his wife. And then we go back in time and we see the life he had with his kid until we eventually see that his kid got shot. Then we go back to the present and we see him train. By the time the training sequence is over, we have only about 30 minutes until the action finally begins, until his revenge finally starts. We are over an hour in. So the majority of this movie is just seeing this main character mourn the death of his son, as well as train to become a better killer. And maybe it's the actor's fault. Like, maybe if you get a better actor than Joel Kinnaman, maybe I'm more invested, but I don't even think it's that. I think when you're doing a silent film, you need to keep the audience's attention. Like, you are taking out dialogue, you are taking out that element that can connect a filmmaker to connect with its audience. You are taking out that element. So you need to be a great visual storyteller. And while the action is good, I'm just not invested in anything that is happening. Like, it's astonishing as I'm watching this character train, as I'm watching him just sit in his basement and be sad as his wife is like, "Come on, you got to be okay. You can come out of the basement." Although she's doing it in just like text, or just like you're seeing the sadness in their face. Which, yeah, like I said, maybe I just needed better actors, because none of these actors are really great, like, facial actors in any way, which you would need in a silent film, obviously. There's a reason why most silent films are barely over an hour long. It's because at a point, silent films were really just popular mainly in the 20s. There are some great ones. I've seen every Buster Keaton movie because of the Blank Check series. And yeah, there are some great ones there, but I think the fact that most of those movies were only 45 minutes to an hour is because they knew back then they couldn't keep the audience's attention for that long without dialogue. The fact that this movie is doing it for almost 2 hours, it makes the movie feel like an absolute slog. One of the things I should say is there is no reason for this movie to be silent, to be a silent film in general. Yes, at the end of the day, the main character's throat has been shot, and you do see at one point he does try to speak, and he cannot get a single word out because his trachea has been destroyed. We see a scene where he does have one of those things where you put to your throat. I don't know exactly what it's called, and you can kind of talk in like a very staticky way. And he eventually just decides like, no, that's not for me. But there's no reason why any of the other characters are not saying anything. We have scenes where you have characters talking to each other, but we just don't hear the dialogue. Like, that's how it's getting across that these characters can communicate. We know they're talking, but the movie's like, you can't hear because this is a gimmick movie, and it's supposed to be silent, but we're not going to go the extra step in making ways that the characters can't talk to each other. And that was just extremely, extremely frustrating. this plot is full of cliches. Like, as I said, it really is just a revenge porn movie where this guy's son gets killed, and the last 30 minutes is just him mowing down different drug lords and different cartel owners in order to in the name of justice. All the villains are cliches. Like, this movie takes place in Las Palomas, New Mexico, and all the villains are just your cookie cutter stock Latino villains that you would see in any other movie. Like, you would see these guys as like side villains in Breaking Bad. It really was frustrating watching John Woo do this. I sort of alluded to this earlier. This movie is told in a non-linear perspective, and there really is no reason for it to do that. Like, at one point I was confused, like, is the main character's son actually dead? I didn't even realize that we were doing flashbacks at a point, because there really is no reason for the movie to be cutting back. There are some scenes where, like, you are seeing Joel Kinnaman's character, like, envision, like, oh man, what if my son was still alive? And I guess those moments are kind of sweet, but honestly, it just did nothing for me in general. And I just think I was so uninvested while watching this movie. It hurts, because John Woo is usually incredible at shooting action. I don't even think the action was that well shot. Like, I guess it's bloody, which makes it kind of feel different than most other movies today. But for the most part, this movie doesn't really feel that unique in how the action is presented. We don't need an hour of the main character training. Like, that is the major part of this movie, is just watching that second year in this character's life of just learning how to become a better shot, how to get better with knives, how to fist fight better. And yeah, this should have been something that was finished in around like 15 minutes tops. It takes about 40 minutes for this whole sequence to finally end, and for the main character to finally go out and enact his revenge, which only lasts about 30 minutes, which for a movie that is that really sells itself on its huge action set pieces, is very, very disappointing. Yeah, I think when you have an action legend like John Woo coming back to make a new movie, and when you say, hey, I'm not going to be putting any dialogue in this movie, I'm just going to be doing it, I'm just going to be telling the story through the action, I think most people get really excited for that. But I'm just not sure John Woo had the visual storytelling capabilities to tell this type of story, and I think he's just focusing on a lot of the uninteresting elements. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I'm going low. I'm going 2 out of 10. This is one of the weakest movies I've seen this year. Joel Kinnaman once again proves that I don't think he has the capability to lead a film, even when you take out the dialogue. Like, even when you're like, hey, this guy's kind of been uncharismatic in the past, but he doesn't have to talk in this movie, so you don't have to worry about that. Even when you do that, it doesn't have anything really to say, and you just leave the movie feeling bored, and it just feels like a bag of nothing. Like, I would not recommend seeing this in the theaters. Even if you find it on, like, cable, like, maybe watch it for, like, 5 minutes to appreciate, like, oh, man, they're doing so much with no dialogue. But even saying so much is a stretch, because, man, this movie really does just feel like empty calories. It is the worst type of action movies that we hear about. But yeah, that just brings us to the end of our show. Thank you all for watching Cinemaster Review this week. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. We're putting out awesome content, awesome movie-related content every single week. Next week, man, we got a big episode. The Boy and the Heron. I'll give a sneak peek. This is my most anticipated movie of the year, Hayao Miyazaki's return to directing. This is one of my most anticipated movies of all time. We're going to be reviewing that. I don't have a guest locked down. I have a guest I hope to get. I'm going to be asking him to see if he wants to be on. But yeah, I'm very excited for The Boy and the Heron, as well as Eileen, the new thriller with Thomasin McKenzie and Anne Hathaway. So yeah, a very exciting show next week. Thank you all for watching. It really means a lot. And as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.